The next speaker is really going to be focused much more on what's happening in particular regions within Northern Australia and particularly in the context of Cape York. There's been an incredible amount of particularly infrastructure development in Cape York where there's been a very strong relationship between the infrastructure build and the Cape York Land Council. And Richie today is going to be able to talk more broadly about the economic development of Cape York. So Richie Matt will today talk to us as co-chair, recently re-anointed co-chair of Cape York Land Council. So congratulations, Richie. The title of his talk is Now is the Future, Decolonised Development in Northern Australia. Richie Ahmat is descendant of Yubungadi people from Western Cape York and Wurundjeri people from Eastern Cape York region. He's born on Thursday Island and later moved to Weipa, where he worked in the mining industry and led the Construction, Forestry, Mining and Energy Union, particularly during the period of conversations and discussion and debate around individual contracts in Weipa. In 1997, Richie was elected as the chairperson of Cape York Land Council, which is an Aboriginal organisation appointed by the Minister of Indigenous Affairs as the native title representative body for Cape York. Richie has held this role for 4 years, or held that role for 4 years, before serving as the Land Council's Executive Director for another 4. And in 2009, he returned to the role and continues on still. So, Richie, really welcome you to the stage, and welcome also to Alan Creek, another key player in the history of the Land Council from Cape York. Lots to open up the discussion, particularly around the great progress I think has been made around things like the Peninsula Development Road and others. Thanks, Richie.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I wish to acknowledge the Dalrymple people of the Rockhampton and Capricorn Coast area and traditional owners from across Northern Australia. I bring greetings from Cape York. I also wish to acknowledge Minister Keith Pitt, Michelle Laundrie, Matt Canavan, Murray Watt, and the conference organisers. And I pay homage to the IRG for the work that they have done. I am very pleased to have the opportunity to speak on the development of Northern Australia and to provide a perspective from our region. Let me say this. We don't have an agreed vision for the future of our regions. Our two governments harbour certain agendas for the North. Industry and potential developers have their ideas, and residents of these regions have their own hopes and dreams. Of course, traditional owners have their own thoughts about the future of their homelands and their people. I don't think we can have coherent development agenda without us sharing a common vision. The north of Australia is white, black, blue and brindle, from Broome to Rockhampton. If we cannot make a difference with Northern Australia, there's something definitely wrong. In my address today, I wish to put forward a perspective from the point of view of my people, but one which I hope takes into account the needs and aspirations of all residents and landowners who have an interest in the future of a region such as Cape York. Before I identify what I think are the crucial issues that we need to come to terms with, I wish to provide a quick survey of where we are at, as it is now 26 years since Mabo. Native title has been part of our land law since the 3rd of June 1992, and the working out of justice has so far taken 27 years. The original Mabo case took 10 years to finalise from the time the Maori Islanders first launched their action. And we are about to complete 3 decades of arduous and costly land claims to deliver the justice promised by Mabo. My Land Council has played a role in this process, not least with the landmark case on behalf of the Wik people. And we have had some considerable successes in delivering land justice for our people. The point is that the land claim era will soon come to an end. 50% of Cape York has been settled. The other 50% is slated for settlement in remaining claims. The next phase is for traditional owners to enjoy, look after, and develop their land. Even as we complete remaining land claims, many groups are ready to enjoy their homelands. Cape York Land Council has delivered millions of hectares of lands under Queensland Aboriginal Land Act and the Commonwealth Native Title Act. Many groups now have native title, Aboriginal freehold and leasehold title to their traditional homelands. Also, traditional owners have made agreements for millions of hectares of their lands to be gazetted and managed as national parks. These groups have added to the nation, the state, and the world's conservation heritage by protecting its tremendous culture and natural values. 5 years ago, the Land Council worked with traditional owner groups across the Cape whose native title claims were still unresolved to complete their claims in an efficient and timely way as possible. This is the Cape York United Claim, known as the One Claim. It claims all the land in Cape York, from Mossman to Kowanyama, that hasn't been claimed under native title. The intention of the One Claim was to settle these claims in a much shorter time frame. On our estimation, it would have taken another 30 years of land claim processes to resolve outstanding native title claims across the peninsula. The claim has not been without controversy. However, we believe that the approach is correct. Governments and other stakeholders should be equally interested in settling as much as the traditional owners who have been waiting a long time to receive justice. Some of our native title claims in Cape York have been going on for 20 to 25 years, and our people are champing at the bit so that there is a native title determination on their country. Land claim resolution is crucial to the good development of the North and is a precondition of development. Sea claims have been settled on the northeast coast of Cape York, and further claims will be prosecuted in the coming years. Furthermore, the High Court decision in the Timber Creek case means that compensation claims for the extinguishment and impairment of native title remains outstanding and will be processed in forthcoming years as well. The successful land claims have resulted in an increasing number of title holding bodies representing traditional owners, as well as land trust holding Aboriginal freehold title under the State Aboriginal Land Act. At this point, there is a plethora of land-related structures across the region, with more to come. It's a patchwork of land title holding structures that are the result of land claim processes rather than planning. Because titles are held under various tenures, with various laws defining entitlement under different terms, this patchwork of structures makes for great complexity and administrative difficulty. Many of the title holding structures are unfunded, and most are poorly funded. The structures have been tenure-driven rather than being based on traditional title holding. This is an understandable result of the haphazard nature of land claim processes. But clearly, there is great scope and need for rationalization of land tenure holding structures. One example of the difficulty is that there are often layers of tenure over the same area of land, involving sometimes two different decision-making bodies and processes for the same area of land. This result is high transaction costs for planning and dealing with Indigenous lands. This is something that must be carefully approached in the post-land claim period. There are many good reasons why careful land tenure rationalization will be in the interest of both landowners and governments. The current situation, with all of its complexity and unfunded structures, make land use and economic development very difficult, if not impossible, for landowners. This complexity also makes land trust and native title PBCs highly susceptible to fly-by-night developers. Not having a go at the developers, we need the developers, but there's a process that should be followed. I think, as Donna said earlier, most of the land across the north is Aboriginal land. It's been determined as Aboriginal land. So just out of respect for the people of the north, we have to really work together. So then we get major outcomes for everybody, not just one group or another group, government, developers, but everybody. There is no coherent mechanism to enable genuine investors to engage in transparent dealings with landowning groups. There is a need for coordinated investment rather than allowing an unregulated free-for-all situation to play out. Land trusts and PBCs have no access to commercial advisory services in order to assess development proposals. Many good opportunities go begging, and many poor ideas are entertained without being subject to proper due diligence and feasibility. There is an urgent need for landowners to have access to commercial advisory support. The end result of all of this, as it is clear to us in Cape York, is that our land ends up as dead capital. We are land rich and dirt poor, with no opportunities to use our land as well as its resources. Our land is unable to be mobilized for the benefit of our people. Our largest asset remains unutilized. Only us outside proponents end up succeeding in using our land in Northern Australia for economic return. Local landowners are rarely proponents in their own development. I'm talking about the white and black fellas across the north, the local landowners. It means industry development is impeded and regional development stifled. As I've said, transactions costs are high. One of the features of the post-native title claim scene is that there is little investment in land administration systems to enable private tenure for home and business ownership. Tenure systems within mainstream Queensland townships have been developed over a century as a result of government investment, and yet Indigenous townships and homelands have no such tenure infrastructure. We need new tenure systems to be developed to reflect land claim resolutions. This will not happen through a user-pay system. We need governments to create this foundational property infrastructure. The Peruvian economist Hernando de Soto made it clear in his book, The Mystery of Capital, that tenure systems are crucial for development. Of course, the larger policy context of all of this is the development of Northern Australia, is why we're all here, which is what we are talking about at this conference. It is now 5 years since this agenda was adopted by the Commonwealth and relevant states and territory governments across the North. The NAIF was launched in Cairns by the then Prime Minister Tony Abbott and the Minister for Northern Australia, Minister Rob. Probably people in this auditorium here were there at the launch. Well, I was one of them. And I'm afraid to say it hasn't helped us one bit. It is now 5 years since this agenda was adopted by the Commonwealth and relevant states and territory governments across the North. The establishment of NAIF demonstrated the seriousness of the Australian government. However, it is not unfair to say that we have not made much progress over these 5 years. I want to take the opportunity today to return to my contention that there is no agreed vision. We all have different thoughts and ideas and agendas, but we don't have a compelling and driving vision. I don't propose to supply such a vision, but I want to suggest some parameters for its articulation. It seems to me, at the end of the day, that there is common ground amongst most people, that we are talking about regional development and specifically sustainable regional development. Economically sustainable, socially sustainable, culturally sustainable, and environmentally sustainable. I think we need to agree on this. I do. I think we need to agree on a vision for the various regions of Northern Australia. I think each region across the North should have its own particular vision. I think Cape York, as a region, has of course many commonalities with other places in Northern Australia. But we should have a vision that is particular to our natural and cultural environment and people. We as traditional owners and as a residential community need to have regard to the advice of the great ecologist David Attenborough, whose recent testament tells us that we all have a responsibility to commit to rewilding the earth. We have a responsibility to stop ecological degradation and to turn the tide back on the loss of biodiversity. This needs to be done in concert with the preservation of our cultural heritage, and we need to do this whilst never renouncing the right of all people who live in Cape York to have an economy. I'll leave you with this question. What is the vision? What is the vision? What is our vision for the future of Cape York? What are the principles by which we are all prepared to stand by and follow over the long term? Once we are clear on our vision, we can then think about how we can get from our current situation to the vision of sustainable development. This involves a question of strategy. This is where we must think about the things that are needed to enable us to move from our current situation towards the vision that we have for our people and our region. We need investment-ready projects. These projects may be directed to the conservation of the natural and cultural heritage of the region. There may be projects that develop the human capital of our people. There may be projects aimed at building the infrastructure of our communities and our regions. There may be projects related to enterprise and industry development. But the key organizing objective is that we need these projects to be ready for investment, assuming that NAIF and other sources of investment can be made available for these projects. Then we need to work on three related agendas. Firstly, there is a proposal that was first articulated in the Palm of Futures agenda that our regional organizations set out in 2017. The concept of investment-ready tenure is about land councils working with traditional owners and communities to capture tenure opportunities. to sort out the legalities and anthropology necessary for proper consultation and consent to be obtained from traditional owners, and for the consent to be captured in a proper way through Indigenous land use agreements and other such legal documents. Investment-ready tenure is about capturing that consent and tying a ribbon around the tenure so that it is ready and available for investment. The actual investment opportunity may not always be identified. By creating a legally certain tenure, the tenure can be made available to the market for investors to consider what the best land use may be. And investors can make agreements with landowners using their tenure as a commercial asset. So investment-ready tenure is not a reactive process to development. It's an idea that enables landowners to be proactive, to create opportunities for themselves and for external investors to consider what best return might be yielded from such tenure. This also means that there must be investment-ready projects. We need projects that are financially feasible, environmentally feasible, and socially feasible, so that necessary regulatory approvals will be forthcoming. To identify them, research must be done to identify opportunities on Cape York. Identify the good agricultural soil, water resources. Amend land regulation to allow these areas of opportunity to be used. Make Cape York a regional collaboration area so we can work together to realize development on Aboriginal land. We also need to think about creating investment-ready bonds, either for conservation or for enterprise, or other forms of ethical and social impact investment. We should create bonds that enable external investors to see ways in which their capital can be mobilized in support of social, environmental, and enterprise development projects in regions such as Cape York. We need to identify the sources of all such potential investments, that the existing NAIF, as well as social impact investment and conservation and ethical investments. All of these sources of investment should be able to be channeled into the region to enable sustainable development we seek. The third element of any strategy is to ensure that we have the necessary enablers that will facilitate development that we want. One imperative is for important large-scale projects on Indigenous lands to be designated as projects of Indigenous development significance, similar to projects of state significance. Such projects should attract high-level support and facilitation so that regulatory and other processes are undertaken as a matter of priority by relevant governments and agencies. A second enabler is the creation of regional taxation zones, which make investment attractive to investors, either through allowances or other mechanisms. Regions such as Cape York should be treated favorably to promote investment that enhances sustainable development. A further enabler is the concept proposed by the Cape York Institute of Tribal Wealth Funds that will provide a facility under Commonwealth law for groups to manage funds derived from resources royalties, rentals and other forms of income, to build tribal-level sovereign wealth funds for the long-term benefit of landowner groups and communities. Such tribal wealth funds would provide a high level of prudential management, similar to superannuation funds, and provide access to expert investment management under the umbrella of the Future Fund. For traditional owners who have resource development operations on their land, the long-term accumulation and growth and proper distribution and investment of such funds are urgent priorities. And the final enabler, which I want to focus on in the last part of my address here this morning, is a necessity for all ideas that I have outlined to be captured in an investment interface between investors and landowners, where investment into our region can take place with proper transparency and regulatory supervision. I want to outline what I think we need to do. This is the house that we need to build. The foundation of house is the creation of investment-ready tenure. This is the work of the Cape York Land Council as a representative body of the traditional owners and each traditional owner group that wishes to capture an investment opportunity for which they are seeking funding. The capturing of tenure for the purpose of investment is foundational to sustainable development. There are 4 pillars to our structure. Firstly, the creation of investment-ready bonds as financial investments through which investment can be made. Secondly, the investors themselves, whether it be NAIF, foreign or domestic investors, or ethical and conservation investors, need to see clear opportunities for them to participate. There needs to be a gateway for investors. The third pillar is based on regional taxation zones for investment, through whatever appropriate means. Many industries in Australia have benefited from favourable taxation treatment in the past. Indigenous development remains a pressing agenda for Australia, and we need to accept that regional taxation zones for investment is a crucial investment and incentive. And finally, our 4th pillar is the creation of the necessary infrastructure for tribal wealth funds to enable proper accumulation and management of capital works over the long term. The whole idea of investment-ready tenure is to underpin investment-ready projects, and through this process, we can achieve sustainable regional development. The second concept I want to leave with you is how we might deliver this investment. We propose a creation of an investment centre for Cape York, to which the Queensland and Commonwealth governments will be party, along with the Cape York Land Council and other relevant traditional owner group that is seeking investment on their land. These offices could go right across the north of Australia, not only in Cape York, but we can pick places and situations where we need these offices. So the development of Cape York and the development of Northern Australia can really make a difference. The Cape York Land Council would provide support in relation to Indigenous land use agreements and native title consents to enable traditional owners to create the investment-ready tenure and grant necessary consents. Such investment-ready tenures can be designated as projects of Indigenous development significance and benefit from regional taxation zone treatment. The Queensland Government would ensure environmental and other regulatory approvals, and the Commonwealth Government will ensure appropriate taxation treatment and other incentives to enable such development. The Investment Centre will provide deal facilitation and will be a conduit through which investment from NAIF and other investment sources could be channeled. The Investment Centre would be the place in which all the parties are able to put their pieces of the investment jigsaw into place. The process would be transparent, it would be commercial, and it would ensure proper consent and appropriate regulations as observed and followed. The Investment Centre would be important under an appropriate structure. I propose to this conference that we commence in Cape York as a trial for the rest of Northern Australia. I think of a series of similar investment centres across the various regions of Northern Australia is the way to go. I don't think a large Northern Australia-wide investment interface would work, but neither can landowners and communities be left to their own devices. It has to be regional in order to drive regional development. My aim at this conference was to say that we are highly conscious in Cape York Peninsula that the land claims era will soon be concluded. We have been given a lot of thought in the past 3 years to the post-land claims agenda of enjoying the land, looking after it, and finding opportunities to create an economy for our people. That is what we have done. This is the agenda that we call Palmer Futures. We believe that the concept of investment-ready tenure is crucial to that future. But none of this would materialize without the necessary infrastructure to enable projects to be identified and facilitated, and to allow investors to deal with landowners in a transparent way that can provide certainty to investors as well as landowners. The state and Commonwealth governments will have to step up and face the facts that previous approaches to regional development generally and Indigenous development specifically have failed. There has not been enough recognition that without this infrastructure and without a concerted determination to address the barriers and to create the mechanisms that are currently absent, we won't get the development we seek, and in 5 years' time, we will again look back and see little progress has been made. So I commend these thoughts to you and wish you all the very best for this conference. Thank you.